Now at 10, heavy rains causing flood concerns to rise. More from Utah's most accurate forecast. Plus,
in Utah, we have some of the greatest, landscapes in the world, but the backcountry can be cruel.
Officials in southern Utah speaking out about the dangerous conditions of slot canyons after a demanding search and rescue and the discovery of 2 deceased hikers. And top aviation leaders in Washington meeting today after a string of several close calls involving domestic airlines.
Live from Utah's first TV station, ABC4 News celebrates 75 years.
Welcome to ABC4 News at 10. I'm Glenn Mills.
And I'm Emily Flores. We thank you for joining us here tonight. We do begin with weather. Flood advisories in effect in counties across southern Utah. Power outages reported in St. George. Several stations even currently off air there. Here in the valley, we are seeing flooding. This is the Highland Alpine area earlier today. Lone Peak Fire District sharing some of these photos. Extensive water runoff from the rain and snow melting in the area. City employees, the fire department, and a group of volunteers are seen sandbagging that area as Highland Public Works created trenches to divert all the water.
People on edge tonight. So for the very latest, we head over to Chief Meteorologist Alana Brophy, tracking everything we need to know.
We knew this atmospheric river was going to deliver an abundance of moisture throughout the state. And tonight, it's southern Utah. We start in Washington County. Check out this video coming out of Dameron Valley, where you can see crews on scene as floodwaters move over the water. They are sandbagging tonight. And we know that there's got flood advisories, flood warnings, and a flood watch in this portion of the state. Thank you to Hunter for sending this our way. Okay, let's get right to the satellite radar here so we can give you a really good idea of where that moisture holds on. We are seeing some snow in and around Cedar City because colder air has moved in, but we're starting to clear the southwest desert. Kane County still active tonight over towards Kanab. And that snow that I mentioned, coming down to the valley floors over towards Beaver County. So a heads up there as we kind of take a look. We move over to eastern Utah, and you're able to see towards Hanksville and Moab, as well as Blanding. We've got wet weather, and it wants to hold on. You can see it over towards the I-70 corridor, as well as in southeastern Utah. So a lot still going on, but we're starting to trend downward when it comes to the intensity and how much is out there. Taking a look, a live view of Cedar City. I mentioned that snow, and it's sticking. As you look down in the parking lot here, starting to stick on the surface and on the roads. It is wet out there. Now, we also know Kane County saw an abundance of rain. They picked up 8/10 in Kanab, and tonight, they still have flood issues. This was Kanab Creek, which was filling up by the afternoon, and we know that rain total is going to be high when we come out of here. Let's take a look at those flood warnings that are currently in effect. As we get a good view here, you can see a lot going on in the southwest corner of the state. We've got a flood watch for most of southern Utah that holds on through tomorrow afternoon. We've got flood advisories in that light green there. That does include Washington County over near Zion, where we've seen a tremendous amount of water and flooding with high river flows for the Virgin River and the Santa Clara River. What's blinking, those are our flood warnings, and that includes over towards Hilldale as well as near Zion and in the southwestern corner of the state, the Santa Clara River running high tonight. While we are losing the rain, we know that doesn't mean the flood threat goes away. We're going to continue to monitor it, and we're going to look at some of these major rain totals that we're getting from the storm system coming up in my full forecast in just a few moments. Glenn, Emily, over to you.
All right, thank you, Alana. New at 10 in Washington County today, another search and rescue at Snow Canyon Park. A family of 5 trapped on one side of a wash by floodwaters. A mother, father, 3 children ages 6, 4, and 2 called for help as flooding occurred on their hike. Search and rescue teams having to use a high line to get the family across the floodwaters. Thankfully, they are safe tonight. This is a reminder to pay close attention to flood warnings. St. George Police saying in a Facebook post tonight, in part, if there is active flooding, consider the use of sandbags, respect road closures and barriers. Local responders use them to safely direct traffic out of flooded areas. Don't walk, swim, or drive through floodwaters, and evacuate if you feel unsafe or you are told to do so. And if necessary, move to higher ground.
A tragic update tonight. We now know 2 missing hikers in a gulch in the southern Utah area have been found dead. They were 2 of more than a dozen people hiking in southern Utah's slot canyons when floodwaters came rushing in. Search and rescue crews were able to fly 12 people out safely. Sheriff Tracy Glover of Kane County explaining the search and rescue efforts.
We initiated a search and rescue event in the Buckskin Gulch and Lower Prairie Wilderness area on Monday, and rescued one individual that was having some health difficulties in the canyon. And over the course of the next 2 days, we've been able to locate two of his friends that were with him that were deceased.
Sheriff going on to say crews involved facing difficult conditions and initially were there to search for 3 individuals, ended up saving 12. He says, although we have some of the greatest landscapes, the backcountry can be cruel. And he reminds everyone to make sure you're checking weather updates and having the proper equipment to avoid tragedy.
And now to helicopter footage of that rescue seen here from one of the groups of hikers that was trapped along the Buckskin Gulch as well. It began as a familiar hike, they say, starting at White House Campground in south central Utah, but ended with the group being airlifted out of the flooding Slot Canyons. ABC4's meteorologist Nate Larson has that story.
Slot canyons can often flood with spring runoff and in the summer when monsoon thunderstorms put down a heavy amount of water in a short time. Our recent warm-up and rain in the region have caused the rivers and slot canyons to fill with water.
Water comes from mountains in northern Arizona and flows north into the Buckskin Wash Slot Canyon. It also comes from mountains up towards Bryce Canyon and flows south, and you get convergence of 2 melt zones going into this Slot Canyon area.
Higher flows are creating life-threatening conditions along southern Utah slot canyons right now. Juan Gonzalez and his group of 4 made a difficult trek down the Pariah Canyon Narrows with rising water levels.
And it's exhausting because you're fighting the currents, you're fighting the quicksand, and then on top of that, you have probably 40-degree temperatures in the water.
His group eventually made it to Buckskin Gulch, where they were hoping conditions might improve.
We had put a marker on the river to kind of, see where the water level was that day. And then we're hoping that the water was maybe going to go down a little bit and make some of these areas a little bit more passable. But what we noticed the next morning was that the water had actually come up higher.
With water levels rising, Juan felt like they were trapped. They had assisted in a rescue the day before, but now it's their turn.
I was like, that's it. We're done with this. We don't need to be putting ourselves in any type of danger or anything like that. So we decided to call it, and we ended up pushing the SOS on our Garmin device. To send a signal, and the Kane County Sheriff's Department contacted us, and they organized the rescue.
Juan was one of 12 people search and rescue airlifted out of the area.
I would have loved to have finished the hike, but I also am not going to put myself in danger. There's a certain limit of saying, look, I like the adventure, I like the adrenaline rush, and I like all that stuff, but I'm also not going to put myself in a situation where I'm going to get killed.
Again, that was Nate Larson reporting. Juan saying that the resources the Kane County Sheriff's Office provided were a godsend, that even though this trip ended in a rescue, he still loves the area and plans to go back again.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints could play a major role in saving the Great Salt Lake, donating more than 5,700 water shares to the state. The Utah Department of Natural Resources saying the water from these shares will flow through the North Point Consolidation Irrigation Canal. That's just west of Salt Lake City International Airport. Every summer, the church's water shares will allow some 20,000 acre-feet of water to flow into the lake. So how much is that? Well, it's the equivalent of nearly 20,000 football fields filled with 1 foot of water. DNR Executive Director Joel Ferry saying this donation will help the state become more drought resilient by guaranteeing water always makes it to the lake.
The location of these shares is so close to Great Salt Lake, it makes it just a perfect scenario for this type of donation. We can get that water right to Great Salt Lake all summer long.
And we want to put emphasis on the donation part of this, not a lease, meaning the state now has the right to the water in perpetuity.
Coming up, airline leaders calling the recent string of incidents troubling. More on what top aviation leaders are saying in Washington.
And just days after the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, sparking fears of a wider banking crisis, the Justice Department and Securities and Exchange Commission now launching separate investigations.
Plus, flooding concerns continue for the southern portion of the state. This was a view of Dameron Valley this evening as crews were responding with sandbags, as well as floodwaters hitting the roads. Another shot of the Santa Clara River, where we've got debris coming down and that floodwater rising. What you need to know as we dry out in Utah's most accurate forecast.